Welcome to the Leadership in Law podcast with host Marilyn Jenkins. Cut through the noise, get actionable insights and inspiring stories delivered straight to your ears. Your ultimate podcast for navigating the ever-changing world of law firm ownership. In each episode, we dive deep into the critical topics that matter most to you, from unlocking explosive growth to building a thriving team. We connect you with successful firm leaders and industry experts who share their proven strategies and hard-won wisdom. So, whether you're a seasoned leader or just starting your journey as a law firm owner, the Leadership in Law podcast is here to equip you with the knowledge and tools you need to build a successful and fulfilling legal practice.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Leadership in Law podcast. I'm your host, Marilyn Jenkins. Please join me in welcoming my guest, Agape Garcia, to the show today. Agape is what you call a live definition of post-traumatic growth. She is passionately dedicated to helping businesses across the state of California prepare for and be compliant with the new workplace violence prevention plan. This plan requires the inclusion of domestic violence, which touches on her personal experience of surviving a double attempted homicide, as well as her professional journey constantly confronted with domestic violence at the workplace. Combined with that, her extensive community involvement has provided a full circle of well-rounded training, which adds a wealth of wisdom and a uniqueness that makes this woman stand out as an extremely credible, competent source you want on your team. Her mission is to help fill a much-needed gap by bringing organizations in compliance, resulting in real-time resources for real-time victims of domestic violence. I'm excited to have you here, Agape. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So tell us what you do and how you got started and how you help people.
Oh my gosh. What do I do? That's a mouthful. All right. So I run a nonprofit. I'm the founder of a nonprofit called Confronting Domestic Violence. And I'm in the background making sure that, we're running on compliance and that we are establishing our program. It's barely reaching its third year of existence. And we are having our very first event this year, which we'll get into a little bit later. And I'm also your SB 553 SME, like you mentioned earlier. I am out there helping different organizations, small and large, understand the high-level requirements of the Workplace Violence Prevention Plan to include all the way down to the weeds and being audit ready. It is a very murky type of bill. Murky type of requirement. And, that's really hard to understand domestic violence if you really haven't been through it yourself. So it's a big calling.
Okay, yeah. Well, I've lived in California for 15 years. A lot of the bills are murky. So does every business in California need to comply with this workplace violence prevention plan?
So not every business. There's two industries that make you exempt. And that is if you're anything law enforcement, parole officer, police officer, first responder, anything that is law enforcement umbrella, you do not qualify or are mandated to be compliant under SB 553 because you already have, that industry already has their own workplace violence, programs in place. Same for the healthcare system. So basically, to simplify that, if you have to follow HIPAA rules, and then also you have to meet three other things in order for you to be exempt. And that is have less than 10 employees at one time in the office, be open to the public, and also be active and compliant with your annual injury and illness prevention plan. If you have all three of those combined, then you're exempt. But if not, you need to comply.
Okay, great. And what are some of the key elements? I mean, what do we look for as a small business or even a medium-sized business to be able to start compliant? And what is the date? And what is the date?
Okay.
I jumped in there first. What's the date?
Yeah. Okay. So very interesting question. So the date is, let me give a little history. September 30th of 2023 was when the bill was signed by Governor Newsom. And July 1st of 2024 was when it went into effect. So it was really quick that it went into effect. Okay. So there has been so much controversy about it more so along the lines of how to make sure that the mandates are being met, right? Because legislation is how the bill was passed through, but they are putting that on Cal OSHA to enforce. So Cal OSHA needs to now understand this bill, back and forth because it's not their mandate.
Right.
So it's been a lot of back and forth. There's been a huge learning curve for quite some time. I personally have a direct contact that I speak to on a weekly, sometime like many times a week basis at the Department of Industrial Relations. So I've been able to find stuff through their guidelines that question what was, the discrepancy or the alliance with what's written in the bill and what's written in their guidelines. So yeah, it's been interesting to say the least.
Oh my gosh.
And and then to answer your question about the elements and like really the ins and outs of the bill, I'll stay high level until we get a little bit deeper. But there's 13 elements and over 30 musts throughout the bill. And so what I've experienced in, talking with multiple organizations is quite a few things. Number one, each and every organization, it has its own culture and DNA. So there's not going to be one plan that is alike. There can be a template type approach, but that's about it. Everything else is very customized and tailored to your specific organization, entity, office, you name it. It's specific to yours.
Yeah.
And so corporations, very different. Some just want the I's dotted and the T's crossed. Give me what I need to fill in the blanks and, let me be done. And then some, actually want like the full on training of what are the traits, what are the human behaviors, what observations can I actually, you know, materialize into a report that says, hey, I think that we have a safety issue, or, I overheard this person saying that they were being stalked, they were crying all day, and I'm just afraid that, their intimate partner might be showing up to the job and causing harm to them and or us. And then we have other corporations that, from small to large, they have security personnel already on premise. And that will dive us into a whole nother conversation. Not a whole nother conversation, but a deeper component to how this bill really starts to unravel and makes you feel like it is like the murkiest of waters, especially when the statistics of domestic violence increased since COVID. The needle has not moved for decades, and the needle was pushed forward during COVID. And with the new mandate of corporation requiring employees to return to work, that person who left a couple years ago is not the same person who's coming back to work. Okay. And with the domestic violence numbers increasing, that's more likely to show up at the workplace than any sort of chemical spill.
That is true. I mean, being locked in a house for 3 months with an abusive partner, it only gets worse.
Right.
So
My heart goes out to the children.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can see like two sides of this bill, which I'm sure is, when I lived in California, every time a new bill came out, you got a booklet in the mail that explained both sides. I mean, it was crazy. But so thinking about this as an employer, it's my responsibility to now monitor my employees even closer or build a structure within my business to make sure I know or have an inkling that something's going on. That is, if you see something, say something is kind of, what we've been personally going by. But as an employer and then as an employee, how does that look in the employee structure, in the company structure? If someone should come to the business owner and say, I think this is happening, and then it should be addressed with the person. How are we handling the actual potential incident before it happens?
Right. So again, going back to size of company, what the chain of, communication is and how that's structured, right? Because every company has their own, again, culture. My recommendation is, really assessing your culture and the communication style that you have. Is an open door policy? Are people comfortable talking, with their managers? Do you have a reporting system where they can report something anonymously? This can be something very triggering, especially if you're a survivor of any kind of domestic violence. This can be very triggering. So because the statistics are so high, my personal recommendation is, put out a small survey, whether it's something that's electronic or you're just having a meeting to, elicit, some sort of feedback from anybody, ask the question, has anybody had or experienced or was exposed to a form of, see how many hands raised or how many people come forward and say yes. Those that have been through it actually have a lot to offer as it relates to their experience and what their ideas could be, in helping start to draft the program. Me personally, I mean, I can totally do that because of my personal experience. But if I'm not being asked, it's not something that's really being volunteered.
Right.
So, so again, I think it's, important to kind of do a pulse check on your current organization, your current personnel, see who's willing to raise their hand and say that they've had an experience, share it and give some feedback. Or if somebody's actually currently in a situation, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's talked about a lot more now than it was back when I experienced it. So it makes, it's not, I went to work and it wasn't discussed. And I went to work with a great big bruised handprint on my face and there was no conversation. It's just like, okay, finish shift, go home. It's weird. So I think it's more talked about now. So I think a survey would probably get more honest responses than we would have even 20 years ago. So that's an interesting way of doing it, having them anonymously or whatever speak up. And I also remember when I was living in California, I think it was the early 90s, the stalker bill passed because of the boyfriend that went to work and literally walked through a building to shoot his girlfriend and like 5 other people. And that was groundbreaking at the time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and you're saying the early 90s in 2014, Thermo Fisher in Carlsbad had the boyfriend walk in tailgating at around midnight and killed his girlfriend right there in the corridors. I mean, it's in our backyard every day. I hate to say it that way, but it really is. And, to your point, now it's talked about a lot more openly. You are correct. There is still this stigma behind it though, right? Like, what's your title? How are you seen? How are you perceived? When you are the owner of a company or when you are in HR or when you are senior leadership or when you are, these labels, that's the last thing that you want to put out there.
But yeah,
For most people, it's still really a stigma. And, I cannot emphasize enough how it doesn't discriminate. Domestic violence does not discriminate. It doesn't matter how much money you have, where you're from. I mean, like, there's a long list. It doesn't matter.
right, right. I mean, and it kind of feels like it might cross that boundary of, I'm the employer. I don't need to be the friend, but now I need to know these intimate details that would not normally know so that I can help you with it. What are some of the useful tips that you can share with leadership to do now regarding the SB 553?
Well, definitely identify who your stakeholders are as it relates to creating this plan. I start very high level. I do a perimeter check, like basically a vulnerability assessment on access control. If they can't get in, then you're already creating the most important barrier right there. Make sure that your doors are closing properly. Are you on a badge system? If you're on a badge system, are you doing monthly reports to make sure that people who are accessing an area have the roles and responsibilities to access that area, or do they just have access to the area because of their title?
Okay.
That's those important things because really, the is the critical infrastructure and the people. So starting at access control and then identifying who would be, your first responders. And I say that walking on eggshells because you have your emergency responders. That's the law enforcement, right?
Right.
Which we all know domestic violence is the riskiest call for police to respond to. But now when you're at work and you have this responsibility, you're now the first responder. Okay.
Right.
So being the first responder, identify who can you count on, who has a past experience, who has, maybe training in de-escalation or, physical threats, and see who you might want to have as that first responder because that's additional training, that's separate training. Also identify who is going to be the decision maker, come up with a decision tree, right? What is the chain of command and or communication? If it's just a regular employee that's seeing something that's going on right away, Who do they need to call? What do they need to report? Because eventually the decision maker has to make a general assessment and say, we're in lockdown, shelter in place, evacuate, go home. A decision has to be made at some point. So it's really figuring out how that effective communication can take place so that the action that follows, behind that is in your best interest and outcome.
So are we looking at an instance where I noticed my cubicle neighbor seems to be, or he seems to have been hit or has been abused? Or are we looking at a stalker type incident? What is the bill? Does the bill focus on both levels of the domestic violence?
Absolutely. Domestic violence comes in many different forms. And, whether it's somebody being stalked or somebody being, verbally abused or financially abused versus, physical marks, all of that constitutes domestic violence. I mean, even coerciveness is a part of domestic violence.
Mhm.
There's so many different forms, and this is where it gets murky, right? Because other people, so let's take a few scenarios. The actual person that's experiencing the DV may not want to say anything to the people at work.
Right.
Maybe they don't want to say anything to their superiors at work, but they're sharing their information, their situation with their co-workers.
Right.
Now that puts a lot of stress on all people, all parties involved, because number one, the person that's receiving the information might start feeling fearful for their own life, knowing that this individual is coming to work every day with a stalker or an abusive boyfriend on on their tail. Nobody knows how far somebody else is going to go for what they call love. Okay.
Right.
So it really puts this stress on the individual that's receiving the information, because what do? This person doesn't want to tell anybody at the job. They don't want to, expose themselves, but this person is fearful that everybody's life might be at danger.
Right.
So it really is up to that person on the receiving end or anybody in ear length shot to say something so that whether an intervention needs to take place or preparation, of a potential threat needs to take place, the communication needs to happen. Again, so simple as it gets down to, here's a picture of a person that it can potentially pose a threat. If you see them, on camera or coming to the parking lot or trying to look inside doors, contact so-and-so right away. It doesn't need to know, nobody needs to know what the name is, who the potential threat is against. It can be super generic, just information sharing to prevent problem from happening, right? It's all about prevention, report, response.
That sounds as a business owner, that sounds like a lot of contingency plans that have to put in place.
Oh my God.
Yes. So how do you help business owners prepare for that? I mean, there's so many, like you said, so many scenarios. It's murky. Obviously, you do training. What else do you help business owners with to get into compliance?
Do you ever feel like the end of the year is racing towards you and you're not quite where you want to be revenue-wise? With only a few months left, the pressure to make significant strides can be overwhelming. I get it. Balancing growth, managing a team, and chasing those big goals can leave you feeling stuck or unsure. It's a common struggle and you don't have to navigate it alone. That's why I'm offering a free strategy call. Together we'll identify the specific hurdles you're facing and develop a personalized marketing plan to drive real results. This is your opportunity to turn those challenges into achievements and set yourself up for a powerful year end. Picture this. December arrives and you look back on a year where you achieved more than you thought possible. How would that make you feel? This call is your chance to make that vision a reality. Don't let another day pass by without taking action. Nothing changes until you change it. Are you ready to see what's possible? Click the link in the show notes to book your free discovery call with me now. Let's work together to make these last few months your most impactful yet. Let's seize this opportunity and finish the year strong. I'm here to help you make it happen.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. So it's not just about the 13 elements and the 30 musts, right? There's a whole bunch of logs that are required. There's a whole bunch of processes that are required. And I'm learning that there's multiple plans that are embedded within this as well. Like I was saying earlier, the communication plan, the response plan, So what I do is I try to, my approach is maximum utilization of available resources. So I try not to start anything from scratch. I like to ask the questions, what do you already have in place that can constitute and satisfy some of those requirements off the bat? So again, things that people have already been trained on, it's just going to be repetitive. So it's more of like muscle memory, and the outcome will be a lot better because it's, again, similar training that's received in other areas, of the corporation that will satisfy the needs for SB 553. So I try to use what you already have, cutting down on costs and time.
Okay. All right. Wow. I'm so glad that you're there to help with that. It seems almost overwhelming, but it's the state of life these days. Why is this so important to you?
Why is it so important to me? This is going to sound crazy, but it's so important to me because when I woke up and saw everything that this bill has in place, I felt like it was writing my life story. I couldn't believe it. I had already established the nonprofit. I had to remove the vision statement off of our website because the vision statement was literally saying that we wanted to see, domestic violence assistance and or support in corporations. And why? Let me break that down. Because most EAP programs, employee, assistant programs, have things for alcohol, porn, gambling. There's rarely something there for domestic violence. Those are all things that take place outside of the workplace. Those are all things that are personal that, the job actually offers help for. So now that domestic violence is a I don't want to say burden, but a responsibility for employers to help prevent, mitigate, and respond to, I believe that, this is something that's going to be implemented fairly quickly into that employee assistance program. So me personally, I suffered a double attempted homicide. So I've gone to work wearing multiple hats. I've gone to work as a victim. I've gone to work as a manager. I've gone to work as, HR. I've gone to work as a physical security consultant. I've gone to work as a compliance officer. You name it. Okay. I have dealt with domestic violence, whether it was my own or somebody else's, at every single job I was ever at.
Wow.
I was wearing. Okay.
Yeah.
So to see that domestic violence can be a problem when you clock in, this is extremely important for us to come together as a community and really, really support the survivors that are showing up every day to work to try to get out of their situation, that really are seeking help and would totally do the right thing the right way if they just had that little bit of help or place that they know that they can share their story to get help.
Right. Okay. That makes complete sense. Wow. And it is everywhere. It is everywhere. So you mentioned your nonprofit. So what's coming up next for you?
Oh my gosh. So we are happy. The nonprofit Confronting Domestic Violence, we're having our very first gala this year, our fundraising event, October 27th in Del Mar at the Del Mar Social. So we are super excited. Our mission is to provide real-time resources to real-time victims and their children. And we also offer relocation services when, parents have a safe place to go, but not the means to get there. Financial reasons or financial challenges are a big reason that keeps, people in their abusive relationship. So we're really trying to fill that gap to prevent that from being a reason.
Oh, wow. That's
So, yeah. So we have our gala October 27th. And then also I'm going to be offering a 3-series training on SB 553, both on October 30th and November 1st. So I'll be doing like a high level training for those that just kind of want to know what the musts and the elements are. And then I have a second level training, which is going to be pretty much giving you an outline of the draft of everything that you need in order to fill in those blanks to make it tailored and customized specific to your facility or facilities. And then I have, a 6-hour training where I'm really breaking down every component of it and you're walking out of there audit ready with confidence.
Wow. Okay. That sounds incredible. That having someone like you on their side, it just takes so much away from the business owner of having the burden to do it. So, and to be in compliance.
Oh my gosh. And listen, I have for 15 years, I'm still currently volunteering for Cal legislation. Cal legislation is all about writing legislation for the state of California and in specific to public safety and privacy. I used to work directly with internal affairs as a mayoral appointee. I mean, I got hands-on training like a on-the-clock officer from sheriffs and from different counties, the federal agencies, Homeland Security, FEMA, you name it. I'm telling you, when I read this bill, I said, this is not murky for me. I understand everything about it. I have some things I need to talk to, the Department of Industrial Relations about, but I understand it like the back of my hand. I can talk about it all day.
Wow, that's fantastic. I hope whoever's listening that has a business in California reaches out so you can help them get everything straight and ready for audit if needed. Sounds like you can definitely are a big asset for this. I know my listeners might want to reach out to you, connect with you. Where can they learn more about you?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. For SB 553 anything, you can locate me at contactagape.com.
Simple. Okay.
Simple. Contactagape.com. I got you. And also, if you're interested in supporting in any way, shape, or form, attending the gala, the theme is Old Hollywood. So even though it's a sensitive topic, we're going to have a wonderful evening. And you can find everything you want out about that at confrontingdomesticviolence.org.
Well, fantastic. That's great. This has been really eye-opening, and I appreciate all your feedback and your advice on the California businesses getting compliant with this. And I wish you luck on the gala. I hope that everything goes really well and you meet your goals and you can help even more people.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for joining me today for this episode. As we wrap up, I'd love for you to do two things. First, subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you find value here, I'd love it if you would rate it and review it. That really does make a difference in helping other people to discover this podcast. Second, you can connect with me on LinkedIn to keep up with what I'm currently learning and thinking about. And if you're ready to take the next step with a digital strategist to help you grow your law firm, I'd be honored to help you. Just go to lawmarketingzone.com to book a call with me. Stay tuned for our next episode next week. Until then, as always, thanks for listening to Leadership in Law Podcast, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss the next episode.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Leadership in Law Podcast. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. There's a whole community of law firm owners out there facing similar challenges and striving for the same success. Head over to our website at lawmarketingzone.com. From there, connect with other listeners, access valuable resources, and stay up to date on the latest episodes. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, keep leading with vision and keep growing your firm.